To quote the great Mark Twain, the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated.
Feeling good, getting better. Feeling good, I can't let it go. I'm feeling good, 'cause I never say never.
The haters are at it again, this time saying that I lost $1 million on sports cards and that sports card influencers are dying off. Unsurprisingly, nothing could be further from the truth. I'll debunk the $1 million claim later in the show, but first, let's talk about influencers. I find it fascinating that influencer has become a bad word to many. I believe the rise of influencers is the most democratic thing to ever happen in media and in sports cards. Let me explain. Media used to be controlled by large conglomerates. Voices were strictly limited to the few journalists who were lucky enough to get big corporate media jobs. Channels were limited and were controlled by the powerful. To a smaller scale in the sports card hobby, publications like Beckett and Sports Collectors Digest were the only sources of information for quite some time. Then came along YouTube and social media. And suddenly anyone with a smartphone could express their views and build an audience. You now have a zillion choices of who and what you want to listen to. You can find an influencer on just about any topic with just about any type of style. In my opinion, it's the great democratization of media, and it's a great thing for the world. I find it ironic that some who are opposed to the mainstream media are also opposed to influencers. If you believe that a concentrated, powerful media is dangerous, then you should support the individuals that have risen up because technology has given them the power to do so. And influencers aren't going anywhere, not in sports cards and not in any field. In fact, they're only going to become more powerful. The entire NIL, name, image, and likeness movement in college athletics is designed to allow college athletes to make money from being influencers. The more you bash influencers, the more you sound like an old man telling the new kids to get off your lawn. Instead, try picking up your phone and going live on Instagram or recording a TikTok. Maybe you'll find that others want to hear your voice, and you too will become an influencer. Imagine that. So Kelly, you ready to jump in? You ready to jump into this today?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic.
I got strong feelings about this.
Oh, yeah.
I got strong feelings about this one.
Well, I mean, not only is the whole conversation about influencers, whether you're talking about within the sports card space or just generally over social media within multiple pockets, it's a very large conversation, and it's a lot of hot topics or not hot topics currently going on about that in particular. But then, we're going to get to another thing that was brought up recently, which is the claims that have been against you, which, like you said, we'll sort of debunk later in the show. But influencers are a hot topic. And, a lot of people are saying that influencers should, the fad should die down. Influencers should go away. But you think that influencers aren't going away at all.
I don't think it's a fad. I think it's a complete transformation in media and how media is created in the country. It's not a fad. People think influencers are a fad, and they're like, the Kardashians and Logan Paul and all these people are like,
right.
No one's going to follow them in the future. It's all going to die off. No, media has changed, and you can tell that this has happened by following the money. There are so many ad agencies that have been around for, forever.
Years,
big Madison Avenue, New York City ad agencies that have added huge divisions to their ad agency specifically to deal with influencer marketing. There's been a whole crop of new ad agencies that have started, that have become massive, that do nothing but influencer marketing. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because that many big companies have discovered that by hiring individual influencers and getting those influencers to engage with their product, to engage with their brand, to speak on their behalf, that is more powerful, better advertising, dollars spent in a smarter way than your traditional forms of television advertising, radio advertising, or in many cases, even traditional digital advertising. Mm-hmm. It's all being outperformed by influencers.
Is that because the way that influencers sometimes talk to their audience or that grow that connection or that relation with their followers is more of like a word of mouth suggestion?
Yeah.
It's taken as a more actual thought through process for who they're talking to explicitly.
Yeah, I really think that's the case. When, people like following people they like. And if you enjoy a personality, whether it's someone you follow on social media or somebody who is a sportscaster on ESPN or a famous musician or whoever it is, if you enjoy that person, if you like that personality of that individual, if you connect with them in some manner, then chances are you're going to give some extra weight to what they say. Right. And that's the whole thing with influence. So brands are discovering that, if they run a 30-second advertisement on television, they're just trying to sell you something the whole time and you're just accustomed to tuning it out.
Right.
But if they take that same amount of money and they go partner with someone who's built organic audience and who has trust, who's an influencer, and then that person, and of course there has to be trust here. Like that person needs to only endorse things that they really believe in, obviously, to maintain that trust with their audience. But if they can get that person to endorse what they're doing, then that person oftentimes is going to be far more effective at delivering the message, driving sales. Their audience is going to trust what they say, and they're going to act based upon what they say. And so you're seeing so much more money, advertising money being poured into influencers, which is only furthering the growth of this. And I mean, it makes sense. Traditional media is dying off. Like it used to be that you had 4 major television networks and you watched the nightly news at 6:30 p.m. and that's how you got your news and information, right? And we've seen this pattern over the last 30 years of an abundance of choices, and it started with they're all of a sudden becoming a bunch of cable networks. But even in that case, there was still a limited number. There were more choices, but it was still limited. Then the internet obviously has completely changed the game, and then social media completely changed the game again, and YouTube to like the biggest possible extent. And so now there's just so many choices of who people want to listen to and who they want to pay attention to. Traditional media is dying, and being able to build an audience today, having an audience is the equivalent of 30 years ago having your business having the prime corner location in the shopping district in your city. It used to be location is everything.
Right.
If you have a
location,
store,
location.
If you have a store, location, right? Because you need to be in the high traffic area with everybody seeing your store when they drive by in their car. Location. Today, in my opinion, it's audience. Today, it is how big of an audience you have, how much do they trust you, how much do they engage with you, how much do they listen to you. That is the 2023 equivalent of the 1980s. You got to have the corner store on the most popular intersection in town.
And I think one of the things that's often underlooked is that it's incredibly hard for people to build an audience because there has to have some specificity on like what you're doing, what you're saying, how you are how unique you are. Now, when SCI got started, the thought there was to drive information and this sort of thought logic behind investing in cards and how you speak to that narrative. Was there any factor in there that you thought you would become an influencer?
Not to the degree. It's a great question. Not to the degree that has happened.
Right.
Building an audience takes a lot of work. It takes repetition. Now, you can cheat it a little bit. We should do a whole nother episode at some point on social media and the different platforms. Platforms like TikTok allow you to cheat a little bit more.
Right.
Because you could have a brand new account with no videos. And if your first video is, perfect, according to the TikTok algorithm, you could end up going super viral on your very first video. But that doesn't necessarily help you build audience that much, because one thing that I've really noticed on TikTok is that the variability between videos is massive. And TikTok really judges the individual virality of a video. So you could have one video go for, 10 million views, and the very next video you post may only get 5,000 views.
Oh, yes.
So it almost doesn't matter as much how many followers you have on TikTok. That's very different than a platform like YouTube, where traditional YouTube, not YouTube Shorts, which are attempting to be a little more like TikTok, but traditional full-length YouTube videos, that's something you really have to work at. You have to earn those subscribers, and YouTube, videos don't go viral nearly as much. They're more just exposed to your subscriber base, and people who have watched your videos in the past. So it takes a lot of work to build that up. It takes a lot of repetition, and it can absolutely be done. And Sports Card Investor is a good example of it. But you have to have a niche that you're playing in, at least at first, that's going to, where you're offering something a little different, that there's a reason for people to follow you and to subscribe to you and to listen to your voice over the multitude of voices which are already out there.
Right.
Has to be something a little bit different. Now, when we started Sports Card Investor in 2019, summer 2019, there was a complete lack of sports card content on YouTube other than people opening packs.
Right.
There were people opening packs, there were breakers, that was all over YouTube. But people talking about cards, and particularly people talking about cards from a dollars and cents standpoint, that hardly existed anywhere. And so that was the niche for us. Now today you got a lot more people doing that, but we kind of carved that niche out, started to build audience around it, and expanded. I did not think back in the summer of 2019, I had the idea that sports cards were going to get really hot. That was my thesis. And I had the idea that people would like the content we were going to put out. And I had the idea that people would like the concept of market movers and they would want to subscribe to that.
Right.
These were all ideas. But did I know that a few years later, we would have almost 250,000 YouTube subscribers. We'd, a few 100,000 across social media as well, that it would become that level? I did not envision that in the very beginning.
I mean, when I joined, you were like drowning in a lot of stuff, and it was because you didn't anticipate the growth that you got.
That is correct. You are correct. Yeah. We for those who don't know, Kelly was one of the very first employees of the company, and when I hired her, it was really like we were at a point where I was just doing it myself. I had a couple of contractors helping with certain things, but it was a very lean operation, and it had scaled so quickly. It had gotten popular so quickly that I was drowning, as you said, absolutely drowning. The success of it caught me a little by surprise.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be successful. I didn't quite think that it was going to scale and become as successful as quickly as it did. So that was really important to be able to hire you. And
but I think that speaks to the fact that like influencers don't have it easy. It's not just, turning on a phone and pointing the camera to you talking about something. There's a lot of work that goes into it. It's a lot of thought, a lot of preparation, a lot of, decisions on stylistic features. And like, even when you do start growing an audience, it's a lot of communication. It's like, you want to make sure that you're interacting with people well enough. So I think that there is a point to be taken in the sense that like influencers, really are within themselves a brand. They are a brand that's representing a brand, and a likeness when you're talking about these media companies wanting to buy into this influencer narrative. I mean, it is this thing where you carve out a niche, you understand sort of the tonality of like how you want to present your information, and then you stick with it and you build from that, and then you bend a little bit or you adjust a little bit as you go on, and as we are now. I mean, a lot of the core ideas that we started with for the company have altered a little bit because we understood that the landscape is changing, right? So you can't always be stuck in some one pathway. You have to be able to be pliable, I think, especially when talking about working with an audience. Audience. You understand what your audience wants, you understand what your audience is looking for at that specific time, and then you adjust where is needed to be able to still maintain and keep that core audience that you've built, but also attract new ones.
And that learning, that's a great point. And that learning comes over time. One thing that people don't fully understand about business or about building audience, about becoming an influencer, is that many of these grand titans of business or people who have millions of followers on social media, they did not start fully understanding that vision. Many business leaders who are looked up as these grand visionaries, what they started with was very humble, and they didn't start with that big vision. You don't have to have the full vision for what you could possibly become when you start. The journey of, what's the quote? The journey of 10,000 miles starts with a single step.
Yep.
It's very true. You may not know where you're going, but you got to take some steps. And if you start taking steps, then you start to figure it out. I had no idea when I did my first sports card investor video. I did not have any grand vision that all of a sudden we were going to have 250,000 subscribers on YouTube a couple years later. I didn't have that vision. But I said, let me do a video and let me see if people like it. I celebrated getting my first 100 subscribers.
Yeah.
I celebrated getting my first 1,000 subscribers. And I listened to the feedback and read the comments, and we've adjusted. We have continuously reinvented what Sports Card Investor is along the way. We have shifted our content. We have gone
Production value. I mean, because even you're
production
talking about
value.
you were in just in a closet.
Yes.
I mean, sorry, it's peeking behind the curtain here, but you were literally in a closet.
Yeah, I was at the beginning
With
of the
an
show.
iPad.
Yeah, I know. But we've continuously adjusted all of that and what we're focused on, because as we've learned and we've grown and we build audience and we've heard the feedback for people and we've seen what the community has to say, then we adjust and we say, we think this, what got us here is not necessarily going to get us to where we want to go. So we adjust and we do something new. I don't know exactly what our channel is going to look like or what we're going to be doing 3 years from now or 5 years from now. I don't even know exactly what the sports card hobby is going to look like 5 years from now.
I don't think there's a way that you can gauge that, though.
No one can ever perfectly predict the future, but what you can do is you can listen to people, you can be responsive, and you can start taking steps. And when it comes to building audience, it's about starting to take steps, starting to do it. Even if 3 people watch what you do, start to do it and listen to what people say. Look at what's going on in the industry. Find little areas that you think you could add value, that you could say interesting things that other people aren't saying, that you could carve out a little niche for yourself and go after it. And then you may change your strategy in 3 months or 6 months or a year, and that's okay. But you just kind of get going. And that's what we've done. And that's what many of these, famous people have done.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of what we're talking about right now with just sort of what we've seen on our end is mirroring a lot of, what we've said about the actual growth of the way that media has changed over time. The corner store being location, having you within this, actual physical footprint of your audience, to it now changing to a, internet platform, right? You've got social media, you've got YouTube, you've got all of these things that it sort of has changed, like you said, the way that media is ran, the way that media companies buy into different forms of getting brands across, products across, etc. Now in what we're seeing, like you said, you can't predict the media landscape. Something that's just recently came up is the name, image, likeness, right? It's this new avenue for college athletes to take hold of and to take within their own hands, honestly, because for a while they had no ability to do this, and people cashed in on it without their ability to also see the rewards of how well they produced in college. So this landscape that's now being opened up and created with name, image, likeness, how is that furthering that narrative with influencers with college athletes?
Well, we've seen this play out. We've seen how critical that actually is. And so you've got the Cavender twins, right? Haley and Hannah.
Right.
Female basketball players. They played for Fresno State, good female basketball players. They transferred to Miami before this last season. Miami went on and had a successful season, made it to the Sweet 16, beat Indiana, #1 ranked team along the way, top seeded team. These twins are personable. They're good on camera. They're attractive. They're athletic. They're a complete deal. Well, they have been very smart about building audience on the back of all of this, right? And they have, I think, 4 million. They have several million social followers. I think 4 million on TikTok and other platforms and that kind of thing. They have gotten sponsorship deals through NIL, the fact that they can now monetize their influence. They have gotten sponsorship deals from Boost Mobile, Raising Cane's, Champ Sports, Intuit TurboTax,
wow,
the WWE, Crocs, Core Hydration, PSD Underwear, Life Wallet, Cigarette Boots,
and
Cactus AI, 6-Star Pro Nutrition. They got endorsement deals from all of them. Then they started their own podcast in December, and it was just announced that Jake Paul has essentially kind of bought out their podcast, moved it to his new Better network, signed them for a 7-figure deal.
Jeez.
Gave them equity
Whew.
in the Better Network.
I'm
This is all on the back of the influence that they build up through social media. It's all in the back. This is going nowhere. Like, this story is going to be a more and more and more and more common story as time goes forward. And I mean, they're not the only ones. Obviously, you had Olivia Dunn, who is the gymnast from LSU. She's got like 10 million followers across TikTok and Instagram. There's plenty of these, plenty of these people. I know when Bryce Young signed at Alabama, he got $1 million in endorsement deals, through NIL, like the moment he signed at Alabama. I don't know. He probably has many millions of endorsement deals, already, and he hasn't even been drafted by, an NFL team yet. That will change.
Yeah.
I guess tonight. That will change tonight. So, but he's like, this is like, the dollars are there. And the reason why the dollars are there is because companies understand the value in this, and they understand the value of engaging audiences through influencers and especially younger audiences. And that's the other thing, like influencer culture,
right?
Like I think it's more older people who, and I'll call myself older, like I'm in the older people category now. I think it's more people my age and up who are probably like the ones who are kind of most like anti-influencer, like, but and I'm not in any way, obviously, but like there's definitely a lot of people who are, but like the younger, like 20 somethings, this is all they know. Like they don't
This is
listen.
all they grew up on.
They don't listen. They don't watch network TV, outside of maybe an occasional show. They're certainly not watching the nightly news. They're not like, they're not watching cable very much. I mean, everything they're doing is streaming.
Right.
And they're watching so much through social, and they're watching all these influencers, and they're, spending all this time every day on YouTube and TikTok. The power of this stuff is crazy. I will tell you, one of the things that has surprised me the most, the number of kids who watch Sports Card Investor through YouTube.
Yes, it's a lot.
I get stopped by kids everywhere. And I mean, I'm talking everywhere. I'm talking not obviously sports card shows.
Right.
Makes sense, right? Of course, I'm going to go to a sports card show. There's going to be kids there that are going to see me, and they'll, have watched the show. And no, most of the time I go to the airport, one person, some kid somewhere says something. I was just at Disney World. I got stopped walking around Epcot. I got stopped 6 times for photos.
That's
6
insane.
times for photos with kids at Disney. 6 times.
Is that so? While that's incredible,
but it just shows the power of it. I'm not trying to brag here. It's the most humbling thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredibly humbling.
It's the most humbling thing in the world, but I'm trying to just illustrate. I'm using this as an example to illustrate that here I am, started this YouTube thing in 2019 talking about sports cards.
Right.
And a few years later, people, this is what we're doing, the content that we're putting out is affecting the lives of a lot of people. There's a lot of people that garner education from it. There's a lot of people that watch it for entertainment. There's a lot of people that get inspired by it.
Yep.
And a lot of kids, especially, and I think a lot of adults too. Just adults aren't stopping you as much. Like that's one thing I've noticed. Like I think there's a lot of adults that are like, you kind of look at you and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that person obviously, kind of recognized me. You can kind of tell. But
I hear it. I mean, we'll walk past and be like, oh, that's a sports card investor guy.
Right.
Like,
adults are a lot less likely to come up to you and interrupt you. Some do.
Yeah.
And I'm totally fine. Like I never get mad at anyone for doing it. But kids are, kids, of course, they don't care. They're like, oh my God, they like chase you down, like running after you in the middle of Disney, which is fun. Right. But once again, and it's not just, I'm not saying we're doing anything special or unique or different. Like I think anybody who like builds audience and does it effectively is going to have those types of experiences. And my point there is just simply the power of it. Like it's really powerful. It truly is what used to having that corner store in the 1980s on the busy intersection in town, having that audience today it truly is that. It truly is that.
I'm just sitting here thinking about name, image, likeness, and thinking about like how that would have been applied to other college athletes, right? Like Michael Jordan.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
I'm so happy that they changed that rule and that kids can make money off their. I mean, that was almost oppressive that like the
Yes.
universities
Oh my
were
gosh,
making
yes.
all of this money off these kids. The universities were
Yeah.
keeping all of the money. The kids themselves weren't getting anything. They weren't allowed to take
Anything.
anything. It was like they get kicked off the team.
Yes,
if
there
they
would be
took-
major
if they
repercussions
took a
if they did.
handout.
Yep.
Like honest to God, like so it was as far. I used to own, back in Gainesville, home of the Gators. I used to own 3 Ben and Jerry's ice cream stores. And thank you, Kelly.
I feel like ever since the SCI skit we did now is anytime you say it, it's
Thank you.
automatic.
I appreciate that.
You're
That's
welcome.
Good. That's
Yep.
good. I used to own 3 ice cream stores. The Chamber of Commerce and the university would send out directives and do educational sessions for local businesses. Do not, under any circumstance, give athletes free things because a football player coming into our ice cream store and us giving him a free ice cream, if that was photographed, if that was recorded, that was enough. That was enough to potentially cost him his scholarship and his place on the football team.
Oh my gosh.
So they literally educated the local
Risking
businesses.
it all for a Ben and Jerry's
Like
ice cream.
literally, like we would get letters from the university every year saying, "Just your local business that we recognize student athletes like to come to, and we just want to be really clear about the rules, the NCAA rules. You are not allowed to give them anything for free. Don't do it
So ridiculous.
because it could be misconstrued as you're paying them for an endorsement, or you're paying them because they're in your store or whatever. You're giving them some type of handout because you want to thank them for signing with the university or whatever." And
Right,
so,
but those colleges could book appearances with the players.
yeah, and make money.
And make money.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that that's all different now.
Yeah.
I mean, it needed to be different. And it should be different because once again, the world has gone in this direction of like individual influence being so valuable now, and it's only going to continue. So of course, this next generation of athletes should be able to profit from that.
I think this is also going to be something that will need to be like looked at as the years go on, because when we look at the way that companies buy into influencers, right? So for instance, we're talking about Haley and Hannah, and let's just talk about Crocs, right? It was one of the ones that they have sponsorships with. Crocs can now take their sponsorship deal with them, or that relationship that they've been able to legally now build with them when they're in college to their professional career. That is now a instant pathway to where they're not having to fight for them or sign them or whatever. They can like grow that relationship with them. And it's almost like a long-term brand ambassador, which I think is such a neat thing now to think about with companies that are buying into these student athletes. Is now you don't just have to get them when they're out of college. You can start sounds bad, but you can start them young. You can, get them while they're in college, while they're still hot. I mean, think about Trevor Lawrence going through this. I mean, you would have had so many deals on the table,
Yeah, 100%.
and it would have carried through to his professional career.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
sets them for life.
Do you know who the 2 biggest Instagram accounts in the world are? Like, who has the 2 biggest Instagram accounts? You probably know this.
Cristiano Ronaldo
Uh-huh.
and is it Shakira?
No,
Shakira's up there.
Messi's now number
Messi?
2.
Is he?
I'm not sure he used to be, but after the World Cup
Okay.
and everything, it's
Okay.
now Ronaldo 1 and Messi 2.
Messi 2.
Selena Gomez is 3.
Oh wow, I didn't
Yeah,
realize
Selena
that.
Gomez is 3.
I do love Selena Gomez.
Yeah.
So I mean, I follow her. I
But-
follow Messi. I do not follow Ronaldo. That's a personal choice. That's a personal choice.
You don't like him with his shirt off? I think that's why probably 3/4 of people follow him.
I don't prefer him as a player. Period.
You see, that's good of you, Kelly. Look at that. You're taking a stance.
I am.
You're not
He's
just
not the
gonna like
influencer I want to follow.
you're not just going to like blindly, follow this guy because he posts
No.
images of himself half naked. You're instead going to say, I don't actually like his play.
I don't.
So I'm not going to. You see, I respect that.
Thank you.
I respect that.
Thank you. I mean, I'm not saying I don't follow. I mean, everyone follows accounts that people are just attractive, so you just follow just to just generally get the attractiveness of it. But he would not be one of the ones that I as a professional football player, I can respect his accomplishments. I cannot say I respect some of the other things that he has done. So, however, I respect the heck out of Messi, and that I follow that man forever. So
I cannot respect the fact that you just called him a professional football player.
He is a professional football player.
Professional soccer player.
He's a professional football
Soccer
player.
All right, we're not
Football
gonna.
player.
That's not an
another
argument for today.
conversation for us to have.
Yeah, but anyway, yes, it all great points here on the influencer
Yes.
thing, and like, I mean, you know, to just kind of wrap it up, like, you know, this is the way of the world now. Like, this is how it's working. And once again, I don't understand why people are so mad about it. I think it's because like they see the Kardashians and they're like, you know, give me a joke or whatever. But
I think it's important to realize that there are different types of
course.
influencers.
Of course.
And we'll talk about that in a second when we get into like the bit stuff.
And
but
then everybody, by the way, who's like going on social or YouTube to complain about influencers
is an influencer.
is an influencer.
Yeah. It's
trying to be an influencer.
Yeah.
So what the heck are we talking about?
I don't know.
This get off the lawn influencer stuff. It's so dumb. Like, stop it. Just stop it. Stop it.
Since we're getting into spicy takes, there's been, you know, clearly a spicy take that's been circulating. And I think that, you know, we teased it at the beginning and I think we should address it. So let's address the accusation that you have lost $1 million on cards.
First of all, it is astonishing how much work people put in to like try to like, you know, put a screw to me or something like that to try to bust me. I mean, God bless the amount of work, the amount of
It is a lot of work.
Hours, hundreds of hours, people watching back video, all this stuff. Like, God bless you, man. Like, goodness gracious, that is a lot. I hope you are putting that same amount of work towards building up your next entrepreneurial venture or building up or whatever your profession is, like dedicating it to that or dedicating it to your family,
right?
Because you certainly got a lot of passion behind you. And I actually respect the passion that people have for this topic. Look, unfortunately, the work that has been done, this like spreadsheet has been built, which is completely incomplete, inaccurate, and dumb. This concept that like, first of all, that I've lost $1 million in cards. These people built this spreadsheet that started after the pandemic. They started tracking my card purchases after the pandemic. Right. Okay, well, first of all, that's convenient. I have been buying big cards since early 2019. I went to the National in 2019 and dropped tens of thousands of dollars on cards at the National. There's plenty of dealers who I bought cards from at the National who will attest to this, probably some in the comments watching this show, that I dropped lots of money at the 2019 National. I then proceeded to spend many tens of thousands of dollars, much more, on eBay in 2019. Buying all kinds of cards that are, I mean, obviously way more valuable today than what they were back then. In addition, this spreadsheet that these folks put together assumed that I never sold anything. Right. So they've got all these cards that I bought back like in the summer of 2020, in the fall of 2020. Many of these cards, some of them I still own.
Yeah.
Several of them I still own. Many of them I have sold. Many of them. There's also so many purchases missing from it. All the sealed wax that I bought. It's completely incomplete,
These
inaccurate.
people are making a spreadsheet for your personal collection. How would they have any understanding of every coming and going of card that you've ever touched?
I mean, well, not only that, but they're not even really trying on some of that because let's bleep that out. I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to curse on you. It pisses me off. They're not even trying because I've done social posts and videos where I've actually sold some of these things for profit in many cases. And they're
traded.
They're just intentionally ignoring all that stuff so that they can, you know, like create this hypothetical.
The tagline is nice. I mean, that's what they're going for.
Fine.
They're going for the headline.
And you know what? I'm honored that it can help their channel get views and clicks and which it does. So good for them on that front. But a couple final points I just want to make on this. First of all, because this is actually like an important business lesson for people to think about.
Right.
If I had actually lost $1 million in cards, I actually only would have lost $550,000 because of taxes. Because I would take that $1 million loss and I would offset it against business income from other sources, right? And there's nuances to this, and talk to your CPA, but you know, it depends if you're going to treat cards as a collectible or if you're going to treat it as a business. There's different ways to set up your card buying and selling and how you handle it, you know, on your tax statements. But if you're buying and selling big cards, you need to go talk to your CPA and get all that stuff straight, because if you lose money on cards, that actually is an excellent tax write-off. Like take that against other income, and and you should be handling that properly. And likewise, if you make money on cards, especially if it's big money, you do need to be reporting that, and you do need to be paying tax on that. And it's going to disappoint many people who are watching, who are part of this crowd, that on my last tax return, I paid multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax on sports card activity. Multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax because I actually made money. I actually sold things for profit, and I actually made money, and I paid tax. Legitimately paid tax, wrote the government a check, did it the right way. It's all scheduled out on my tax return. It's done properly. I don't hide stuff. And that's it. So the whole thing is silly, but it's fine. It gets, well, it's not fine. It pisses me off, but it gets them clicks and views, and it is what it is. Yeah. And whatever. So that's my response to that. We're not going to talk about it anymore. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Yeah. Not going to care about this thing or those people or whatever. But I did want to address it since it is the hot topic of the moment. It appears on other channels. I mean,
it's again, when we talk about, there are different types of influencers. There are people who influence for what I would consider to be a negative driver, right? Yeah. There's something that's attractive to some people about negativity in general.
And look, the market has gone down a lot in the last couple of years. And I say everything I just said. There were absolutely a lot of cards that I bought late 2020, and 2021 that have gone down in value a lot. Like without a doubt, that's absolutely true. That there's a lot of those. And so look, as I've said in the previous episode, I think people are grumpy. People have seen their collections go down. They want to point fingers. They want to blame. I don't like it either. I was too optimistic in 2021. I'll be the first to admit it. In 2021, we saw things go down. I thought they were going to stabilize and go back up quicker. That didn't happen. They slid down for 2 more years. I continue to buy cards. A lot of those cards are worth a lot less today than they were. And that is what it is. And it's fine. I have no problem admitting that I lost money on a bunch of cards that I bought in late 2020 and in 2021.
You wouldn't be the only one.
Right. But I also made a lot of money on cards that I bought in 2019. And I made a lot of money on cards that I bought in 2020. And I feel pretty good. And I've actually done successful flips this year. And things that I purchased in the last 6 months, I've turned around and sold for profit. I was buying big Ohtani cards this off season. I have sold some of those for profit already. Like it's obviously a very incomplete picture of things. I have no problem owning up to the fact that I've lost money on some big cards, but it's also stupid to do a very intentionally deceptive, very limited view report that it's just dumb. Anyway, all right, enough of that.
So this sort of will carry us in a small way over to when we're talking about the bit segment. So again, I just want to reiterate, there are different types of influencers. There are people that have like a large following, people that have a medium-sized following, people that have more of a niche following. This is sort of the grits, as I call it, because it's like the small bits of, but this is this type of stuff that I'm really interested in, is to understanding the specific influencer that you're paying attention to and how that's applicable to marketing, right? So when you're talking about different levels, you're talking about your macros, your micros, and your nanos. So for layman speak, the macro is somebody that's got like 50K to like over 1 million plus followers. Like that's a macro. That's a very large following. A micro is someone that's, maybe 10,000 to 50,000, that's a decent sized medium audience there. And then the nano would be somebody that's maybe 1K to 10K. Again, a smaller audience, but it's very niche. And both of those two lower ones seem to be like really well centered, focused, and engaged. So there are different ways as a media buying company, in the sense of like, if I'm Nike and I want to, get an influencer, I'm deciding what's the product, who do we want to talk to as the audience, and then how do we approach it from that angle. But one of the things I wanted to do with the bit segment is take that sort of high level approach of like macro, micro, and nano, and then I wanted us to talk about specific influencers that you follow, that you think talk to their audience or know their audience well, and that plays well in that sort of game. So we're going to start with like the upper level, the higher echelon. That basically, if when I say macro, this is somebody that you're probably going to say that people will know.
Okay.
Right. So this is somebody that you see that really owns their audience, really owns their niche, even in a macro sense, but you think does a really good job about it. So who would be a macro influencer that you respect?
So I'll think of people that are generally related to our space.
Right.
I'm only going to do one person because I could sit here and rattle a whole bunch of people off.
For sure.
There's lots of influencers who I follow who I think do a fantastic job. But if we're going to talk about one on the high end, on the macro end, how about Darren Rovell? I like Darren a lot.
Yeah.
He can be controversial. And, there's people.
He can be spicy.
He can be spicy. He sometimes goes after people and, that kind of thing. But Darren Rovell is a tremendous storyteller. And if you're not following him on Instagram, especially on Instagram, Twitter, you're a little more limited, but on Instagram in particular, Darren Rovell's posts are gold. They're often about sports cards, collectibles, or just sports stories in general. And they're fascinating backstories about, just culture and history and it all ties into sports. Darren Rovell's a great follow, and he's such a great follow because he's such a good storyteller. And there's such value in an influencer being able to tell a story in a really compelling way. Storytelling in this age of influencers, storytelling is an underrated power.
Oh, 100% agree.
Yeah.
100% agree. And also, I mean, if you just want to understand what that sort of storytelling is like, we did a slabs episode with him where we went up to, New York, New Jersey and hung out with him and saw, his collection. And just being in the room with you when you guys filmed that and he started going through like each bit, like there's so many interesting moments that draws from a collectible and his, private collection that is just really fascinating. So if you guys ever want like a deeper dive into that, we did a slabs episode with Darren Rovell, and you can find that on our SCI YouTube, which is Sports Card Investor YouTube channel. But let's go to micro. So the micro influencer, somebody between that's the 10K to 50K range, and I guess we'll do one person again, somebody within the hobby space.
Let's do Neo Cards and Comics, Northeast Ohio Cards and Comics. So he's on YouTube.
Okay.
And we've worked with him for a long time. He uses Market Mover, so we've worked with him from a long time from that perspective. But he always has really, in my opinion, strong takes about the sports card market. Does a very good job. So one thing I'll give him a particular shout out for. He does a very good job about getting videos out quickly that react to something that's currently happening. So whether it's news that breaks and then he's very quickly out with a video,
right,
or something that happens in the market and he's very quickly out with a video reacting to that. And that, by the way, is a great strategy for anybody out there who's trying to build up audience for the first time. It's called newsjacking. There's an actual term for it.
I actually did not know that.
Yeah, it's called newsjacking.
That's interesting.
I'm the guy who invented that term. Gosh, his name escapes me now. But I met the guy who wrote a book about this and invented that term like 15 years ago. But the term is newsjacking. And what the term is that whenever any type of news item happens, there's going to be this hype cycle that occurs around that news item for 24, 48 hours. People are going to be searching on it. It's going to be on the top of Google News, that kind of thing. If you quickly react and put out content about that news item, you have the chance to kind of benefit from that news cycle, right?
Interesting. Okay.
And so because people they're like, well, that's a big story, and then they want to go to YouTube and see a reaction to it or whatever. So if you're the first one out and you're coming up first, then you've got the opportunity to build audience just by being first and having an interesting perspective on it. That's something that Neo Cards and Comics does really well.
Oh wow. Okay. That's your term for the day. That's fascinating because I mean, generally it's known, like that sort of type of thing is known, but it's a very hard thing to do. I mean, credit to him on that as far as flipping something that quickly. But newsjacking, very fascinating. Okay. So last one we're going to do is nano, and that is where it's the 1K to 10K. These are also people who still do get, buys in from brands, things like that, because typically with this audience, it is a smaller pool when you consider it against the, macros and the micros, but the audience tends to be a little bit more engaged. They tend to be hardcore followers and or niche followers in a specific sector. So with this one, again, let's do one person and within the hobby space.
Let me give a shout out to Cage Lawyer.
Hey!
Cage has changed things up recently. So he's in the nano space on Instagram. Now, of course, he's got a popular podcast. He may have a total reach of, I'm not sure I call him.
Closer to a micro.
Yeah, I'm not sure I call him like a nano. But if we're just strictly kind of going off, like looking at his Instagram following or whatever, then I guess he falls in that range. But he had a podcast for, since 2020, Lucas, Tigers, Bronze, Oh My. Recently split off. That podcast has come to an end. And he's recently split off to do his own solo show. That's a few episodes in at this point. But Cage is one of the, in my opinion, one of the more entertaining people to watch and listen to in the sports card hobby. He always has bold takes.
He does.
He
always has bold fashion choices.
And he never holds back his opinions. He attacks on things. He says what's on his mind. He speaks freely. And he's always very passionate, energetic. He could talk for hours by himself. He can talk for hours. Like he doesn't even need a co. He can just talk for hours, but somehow keep the energy level up the entire time. So he's funny. He's just a good follow. So I really like Cage Lawyer.
I love those. So this is again sort of reiterating this fact that like these are the macro, the micro, and the nanos that you attract to and that you follow, but they may not be that way for everybody. But it is still this wonderful thing that with influencers you have so many options and places / people to follow that will give you what you're searching for or looking for or wanting to be a part of within any social media space. So I think, again, it just sort of circles back to this thing that the actual landscape has indeed changed and will continue to change and benefit, I think, of influencers for sure. What a cool episode.
This was fun. I enjoyed this one.
I mean, on a personal note, myself, I guess it would be considered a nano. This is into my personal life. I really like folding. So super strange, but I will specifically go follow people who have like really cool folding strategies.
There's folding influencers.
Oh yes, there's
folding clothes.
Yeah, folding clothes.
There's folding clothes influencers.
Yep. There's ways to fold your towels in different ways. Your jeans, your sweaters. Whenever I have dinners, I try to do different napkin folds. I love fold. Like it's like a weird thing of mine, but I follow folding influencers, so there's something for everyone.
There's something for everyone, and that's awesome. Like I think that's crazy. I think that's amazing though, that you can have an interest that is that specific, and yet through the power of social media and YouTube, find people who have that same interest and have done great things in that space and follow them.
But that's cool. That's a niche.
It's a niche.
It's a niche that people are capitalizing on, and so is Amazon. So thank you, Amazon.
Maybe it's the next big thing.
It should be. But this has been the podcast today. So you can find us on, it's Geoff Wilson on the social medias and the Geoff Wilson Show on YouTube. You can also listen to us on all of the podcatchers, whether that's Apple Music, whether that's Spotify, whether that's anywhere else that you find your podcast. You can put us in your earbuds and listen to us as you drive or hang out or fold.
Or fold indeed. There you go. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. See you next time.